episode of the Renaissance Room podcast. I'm recording this in my car, so I'm really hoping that it's not too bad. And maybe we shouldn't be disclosing behind the scenes for production and all the other professional reasons why we probably shouldn't do that. But I hope you guys are doing great. I hope you guys are having a great day. I think about how much time I spend alone, and it is slightly concerning. But, I was just thinking to myself, I have such a rich inner life, and I'm very grateful for that. My inner life is one in which I've always sought to share with others, but I've always felt crazy. And I'm not the type of person, when I say I have a rich inner life, I'm not trippy. Like, I don't be on all that. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not, there's nothing like, I want to say dysmorphic or dysfunctional about my inner life, right? It's just such a beautiful space that I've always just wanted and wished I could share with other people, because it's literally like heaven. I'd be on cloud 9, and I'm very grateful for that. First of all, it took a lot of time to cultivate such a rich inner life, so I'm very grateful for that. And honestly, I really love the way I think. I love the way my mind works in terms of just like how I think and my experiences. I've always been very curious in regards to my intelligence. For a very long time, I sought to give my dad a lot of credit for my intelligence. Don't get me wrong. I do think that my dad played a vital role in in the cultivation of my intelligence, because my dad poured a lot of wisdom into me when I was very young. He would literally pick me up from the age of like 6, 5, if I can remember, as young as I can remember. And he just would sit and talk to me about life. And he would just pour wisdom into me from his experiences at such a young age. And that was our relationship. So it's no wonder why I cultivated like a love for intelligence and knowledge and philosophy overall at such a young age, and even just in my life now. My mother wanted to be a teacher. And I remember reading some of her books and just going on such a trip with the authors and the imaginary fictional characters and things that just really opened up, for my imagination. And some of the books were a bit, out there, I think, for such a young person, but I'm very grateful for those experiences. And so, yeah, she used to buy me journals and I would write. And I remember my first little boyfriend in the 7th grade, he wouldn't write me love letters, but he would like draw me pictures of like his and our name, but he was a really good artist. And so, yeah, I always just think about like, how do we get here? Right. And so I'm just, working on some extra projects, and I'm really just excited, looking forward to those. I love journaling. The peak, honey, I can't even really say peak, but the level of self-awareness that I have is it's just something I really cherish. Like, it's something that is so beautiful. And I find myself, whenever I'm engaging with people and I start to feel like, oh my gosh, like, what do I bring to the table? And not just in terms of relationships, like, romantic relationships, but any relationship that I'm in. When I start to have these thoughts, I just remind myself of my rich inner life and how people would be so grateful to get a piece of this. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a very beautiful space, but not really ego stroking and like getting outside of that. It's just more so like reminding myself where my real worth and value lies, which has always been internal for me. So I'm very grateful for that. And I guess I just wanted to get on here and share some of my morning observations. First things first, I would like to say that coffee is simply your morning diuretic. I've tried a lot of different coffee shops up to this point, and they all taste the same. I think the only coffee that genuinely kind of has like a different taste is Starbucks. And I think because they put crack in it. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I kid. I'm just kind of like on one. I'm in the car right now. I just told you guys that. And like the AC's not on. It's kind of hot. And so I may be like a little loopy. I'm not going to lie. But I'm breathing fine. Everything is fine. I don't feel like I'm getting ready to pass out. But it just got me. It's very relaxing. It's kind of like a mini sauna. And so my thoughts, it's like the car and the heat and the pressure from the sun. Okay, I'm kidding. But like, seriously, being in my car is just kind of like a sauna for my thoughts, and I'm just very relaxed. So I just tried to say that to make you guys laugh. I think it's kind of bad when you go back and like explain a joke like I just did. I kind of like that takes away from your laughter. So I hope I didn't rob you guys of that, because that was pretty funny. But anyways, I don't think that coffee tastes any different, but let me know. Maybe I need to try something different. But I've tried quite a few things. I do typically stick to like a latte. I'm a latte kind of like gal. but I don't really notice a difference. Nonetheless, my overall observations, I'm really big on just really understanding the psychology of human beings today. Social media, sociology, and the ways in which we interact with one another. One thing I've noticed to be very common in regards to relationships, not just romantic relationships. When I say relationships in this podcast episode, note that I'm talking about the relational sector as a whole, how we relate to one another in terms of community and just trying to get our humanistic needs met, right? So one of the things that I've noticed in regards to the relational sector is a lot of things are forced today. A lot of people are entering into relationships based on something they've seen online, based on their own personal pedestalization of another person, whether it be a race or a different person because of the lifestyle that they present. And a lot of things are no longer genuine, right? A lot of things to me, what I'm noticing, and just this is all me noticing from observation, right? Y'all know I'm really big on observation. I'm really big on you speaking from your experiences. And I've just noticed that a lot of people are just in this space now where they're really just trying to seek something from another person, whether it be a void, whether it be, somewhat of an opportunity, right? Like people are kind of looking at others as opportunities. How can this person help me make more money? I've heard a relationship coach. That's why I told you guys, in that podcast episode on the subscription, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. What's up? Come on, we've been doing this for a while. Come on, lock in, period. You're either going to bag it or you're not. No, but yeah, definitely check that out. But I talked about how women, I've talked about men and relational coaches and all that stuff, and just how they pander to people, really playing on our inability to create relationships. And it's not due to our own willpower, right? So much of our relational deficits is due to things that we cannot control. And I just noticed how a lot of relationship coaches are essentially paid advertisers. They sell you a dream and you'll just keep coming back to their content because you're not getting the service, right? And this is also too what we have to be mindful with certain things. If people tell you something, you should look for testimonials, right? And with relationship coaches, there is no testimonial, right? So it's there's just this never-ending cycle of consumption. And one of the things that really made me realize that was when I fell into that trap. So definitely check out that podcast episode in the subscription service. But just very briefly here, I fell into that trap and I found myself doing and becoming, and I just got to a point where I looked up and I was like, wait a minute, I'm all of these things, right? It's you look up when someone's coaching you and telling you something, and you look up and you're like, wait a minute, no, wait, I'm all of these things. And so I just got my shit and I just went home because I'm being scammed, right? There's no way, there's nothing else for me to do to become more of X, Y, and Z said person when I'm literally at my best, in the sense of this is as good as it's gonna get for right now, for this particular season, for this area of my life, and I'm 100% deserving of love. So they really sell you this marketing thing to where it's you don't have love because you need to work on yourself. Now, don't get me wrong, I am a bit of exceptional in a sense of my life. I think about most recently, I was just thinking about why I'm very well-rounded. And because my parents were definitely imperfect, but as I've healed and I've moved on from those sectors, and I've just kind of got to a point in my life where I'm just very grateful for my parents, and I see the good and I accept the bad and I accept what will never change and so forth, right? I realized that I have this very privileged experience of having two parents. I have good parents, I have good-hearted parents who definitely made their mistakes, but they show up. And at times, granted, it wasn't what I needed, but like I said, I'm healed from that. And so I don't really want to keep I don't want to have to toggle back for the sake of this conversation. So just follow me. But I'm saying that I had that. And so I have a very well-rounded sense of being a whole person, right? I was aided in my process of becoming. So I realized that. And one of the things that I just realized outside of our ability to force relationships was that a lot of people were jumping on men. And I felt for men. I deeply understood and I sympathized because I realized that men are taught that they are competent by what they do. And for the first time, we were starting to see men were not competent in relationships. And the area that is never really explored is the negative effects of single motherhood and how single mothers have a very interesting way of taking those biological needs for relationships and companionship and putting it on the place of their children. And there are mothers who are narcissists, and that's something that is never addressed. And I look forward to talking about that at a later date. But that was just one of my keen observations today. And I just realized that that's really why a lot of the relationships were suffering, because for a man to willingly admit that I am not competent in this area, that takes a lot of courage, right? Trauma is painful. Trauma is scary. Trauma hurts. Trauma is traumatic, right? It's fearful, and it really explores these areas of weakness in which men are taught that is uncharted territory, and you don't deal with that. So now we're at this space where women are completely competent. If you do come from that privileged background where you have both of your parents, you're okay. And I really just kind of want to affirm really anyone in that space, because I need you guys to know that, like, we're not the majority. Right. And I say that because I don't think people realize, like, the privilege of having two parents who were not perfect, but like you had two parents in your life who were active and who were there for you, right? Aiding in your development in the best way that they could. And so it's like, you're really a part of, like, you're in a small percentage, and it's not to really create division, but it's more so just for you to just kind of realize, like, not everyone has those experiences. So it's going to be hard for you to really be in relationships with people who don't have those experiences. Like, it's going to be a lot of, and it's a very sad thing, because I notice a lot of times men talk about daddy issues, and women are really put in this very negative space because, they may not have had fathers or so forth. And, it's shunned upon, but this is a lot more common. And so I realized for myself, being that that's not necessarily my story, I realized the latter is also true, right? Like, having two parents in my life, it is a little bit different. So it's like, I don't have the same struggles of, like, having someone who was never there. And so when you do have those experiences, realize that that's rare. But yeah, I realized that that's one of the biggest things that's really hurting, or not hurting, but that's really something that's, like, on the back burner, right? Like, in regards to relationships, men aren't pursuing because of that. And I also have to say too, for myself, now that women are kind of coming in and, like, coddling because they're being gaslighted for essentially moving on and achieving, or even having a little bit of privilege, or even deciding to go and get better education for themselves. Women are being gaslit in that sense. And so a lot of women feel like they have to regress and kind of, like, step back and, like, do all these different things. And I mean, honestly, I think that everyone has their own journey. I don't think that you can really help a person to the extent that they're not willing to help themselves. And I think that there's so many resources out there. I think that the biggest thing, and Bell Hooks talked about this too, is that because of this educational indifference that we're always, talking about and exploring in regards to women education versus men education. A lot of people like to throw that out there. And I guess from a statistical standpoint, it is obviously true. But because of this, we no longer hold men to the same reins, right? And what I mean by that, it's like, we see men as incompetent. And you even think about this in the media, right? It's always the stupid father. It's always the irresponsible father. It's always the retarded father. It's all, you know what I mean? So it's like, when you do that, you realize that, like, you don't even see this person as an equal. And Bell Hooks talked about that, how women don't see men as equally competent. So that's another factor, right? We feel like we have to come in and we have to save and we have to do all these different things. And it's like, no, they're 100% capable of finding the content, going to therapy, finding a therapist, and doing all those things. I think the most unfortunate thing out of everything, though, I can honestly say from this observation, is that the media is controlling very much the relational sector. When relationships become marketable and commodifiable, then it's pretty much bad, right? Like, once capitalism gets its hands on it, I don't know, the moral kind of goes out the window. I'm not going to lie. So I think that that's really what we're up against now at this point. And so what you have is a bunch of people who are so immersed in this, and they can't really pull themselves out of this rat race and realize, like, whoa. Not every woman wants me solely for money. Not every woman, and here's the thing too. Can we also grow up and realize that, like, you need money to exist? And I think that you got to work on having a healthy relationship with money, because I think the answer is not to forego the pursuit of materialism, because obviously you need a shelter, like you need somewhere to live, and like food, you have to pay for food. So it's like, we can't just erase and eradicate this, you know what I mean? Like, we have to work. So that's just what it is. And I also would like to add too, that when it comes to working, it's really not the worst thing in the world, because honestly, when it comes to being idle, right? I even think about, college, for example, and how people will pick up something and they have no idea what the plan is for this degree. They have no idea the trajectory of it, but they just go and they'll just keep growing, right, and accumulating more degrees because we need work, right? Humans are not really created to be idle. I do think that there's a moment for solitude, and I think that should be held in the morning. I think you should always take time for yourself, especially when there's, self-reflection and you just need to kind of like recalibrate, right? The world is always moving. There's a lot going on. But overall, the answer is not to not work, because that would not be good for us. We're not created for that. That's just, I really feel like an idle mind is the devil's playground. To never have anything to do, to not have any work is not, you're asking for that, but you don't realize what you're asking for. So maybe less work, but no work is not the answer. And work could be whatever, it could be your passion project. I don't really know, but the answer is not to forego materialism, and the answer is not to say we're not going to work. But we do have to realize the ways in which relationships have become commodifiable, and we also have to acknowledge the fact that when we say things like, oh, women only want us for our money, we really are kind of like having a bit of a pity party. And we're also kind of in a space where it's like, is that true? Or, is that your experience? Is that the type of women you go after? Like, what is that, right? Because it sounds like a whole lot of generalization, and it sounds like something that the media has fed to you, right? I also think in terms of desirability in regards to women, I always say go around in your neighborhood, go out in life, and just look at the women in the real world. No woman looks like that on social media. I don't care what you say. I've never seen it, and I've traveled, right? I'm well traveled. I do got a lot of more places to go, but I mean, honestly, I'm well traveled. Traveled enough to know that these women that you see on Instagram don't exist in the real world. No woman has this perfect body. No woman it's perfect in her own right, and I've always felt that women are a lot more beautiful. I think that our beauty is intensified when we really love ourselves and we have rich inner lives and we have healing and peace within ourselves. Because one thing I know, the body will change, right? I'm looking at this older man. He looks great. I mean, he's jogging, looks like he's getting a six pack going and so forth. And that's great, but realize that life happens, and, the chances of you being able to just solely focus on the attainment of your beauty, you're going to forego a lot of things, because that's just not realistic, right? Like, if you spend all of your time, this goes for men and women, if you spend all your time trying to upkeep this body, and I'm not saying a healthy amount of time. I'm talking about this really endless pursuit to preserve vanity. You're gonna miss out on a lot of things, because life just goes on, and that's just what it is. You don't always have time to be dedicated to the gym. And I do think that it goes back to your priorities, right? Like for me, obviously I like philosophy. I like philosophy. I value thought. So I spend a lot of my time reading. I spend a lot of my, So for me personally, I don't have the time, on top of working, on top of the creative projects that I have as I get older too, spending time with my family, just being a little bit more cognizant in regards to time management and how much time I really do have. I personally don't have it to spend endless amount of hours in the pursuit of vanity, right? Now, I will say that I definitely believe in eating healthy. I believe in prioritizing some form of exercise, right? But for me personally, I don't really have the time to sit and invest all of this time and energy into preserving vanity. I just don't value it that much, And I think, again, because I really feel like the beauty is just something that is just, hey, we've heard it all before, right? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and beauty is something that cannot be seen, So I think to really experience beauty, for it to be felt. I think what makes something beautiful is when we put our everything into it, into refining it, into cultivating it. And I think we get a really great return on our investment, right? And then I think, lastly, I'm just going to tie up this because I just went on a tangent in regards to beauty. But yeah, I truly believe that in order for real love to exist, two people would need to meet themselves. And when I say meet themselves, I mean you're going to have to really unlearn all of that in which you've been taught about yourself, all of that in which you've been given in terms of like expectations and the stories that have been placed on you, right? Like no one in our family has ever done that, or you're ugly, or whatever the case may be, right? Whatever the story was given to you as a young child, and you're still carrying that out. I think real love can exist where there's a blank canvas and two people show up and there's this really, really beautiful blank canvas that is ready to be painted and created, right? I think it starts at this really blank canvas and there's this honesty, and then I put up, these are the things I'm really passionate about, these are the things I've always loved, these are the things that I've always valued, and these are the things I've learned to value over the years, right? Here are the things that make me happy, here are the things that don't make me happy, right? And then there's this agreement in regards to values. But yeah, I think real love can really only exist where there's radical honesty. And until you can get to that other side where you can meet yourself, I don't think you're really going to have love. I don't think you're going to have real friends. I don't think you're going to have real anything, to be honest, because love is something that is created, but it's only through the unlearning that you can really can create something for yourself. And that which is love, I don't think that love is one of those things to where it just happens, I think love is a very intentional act, right? And I knew for myself, I didn't always feel loved by, my parents and some of the choices they would make. I would be so upset, but I look at what they do, right? And that's what it becomes. And so when we live in a culture where we prioritize our feelings, we prioritize feeling good, we forego rationality, and that's not really where honesty lies. And I'm not saying live entirely from, a headspace. Like definitely you want to have some, some confirmation in regards to feelings in your guts. But, you just have to realize that love is 100% something that is created. It's created and it's a choice. And, you just choose to love a person, and you just choose to love a thing, and you're not always going to be on, and you're not always going to be feeling, and you're not always going to be, but I think if you're constantly waiting for feelings, then it's dangerous, right? I was just saying how, I was writing, but I was thinking to myself, and I thought about crying and how everyone should cry, and we should cry often, because life is hard to an extent. If we make it harder for ourselves, and it's really hard. But life is kind of, it's kind of rough out here, right? I try to clear my head from all those things that would make life a lot harder. I think that your thoughts can make life a little bit easier for you. But, like I said, back to that inner rich life. Like if you have a really rich inner life can be very beautiful. But I was just saying how, we should cry often, because, life has a way of really giving us a lot of hard feelings. I think that just from our early on experiences, there are a lot of hard feelings, and those feelings need to pass, right? When you don't feel good enough, you need to freaking cry. You need to cry. You need to let it off. When your partner or when your friends don't include you, or you feel less than, you need to go and you need to cry. You need to cry. You need to cry like a little baby. You need to just let it all out. You feel like a loser. You need to go and cry. And then once you let it out, you realize that those feelings pass. Now, does that mean you need to go cut your friends off and address this person because that's how you feel? No, because 9 times out of 10, feelings are not facts. And like what you just did was release those hard feelings. And now you can see the reality and realize that, okay, you're not a loser. It's just a feeling. That feeling came from that time when you were pushed down on the ground in recess and you didn't stick up for yourself. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? But it doesn't make it the reality. You're not a loser today. You're doing great. So it's like, people need to cry. And I think that's all for today's podcast episode. And I hope you guys are doing great. I hope you guys, shout out to the listeners, because people are still rocking with me. And it has been a very interesting thing trying to brand this podcast. And I really haven't put much thought into it, because I just like sharing my thoughts, and like, I like liberating the mind and helping other people. I think education has been so enlightening for me, and I just want to share the things that I've learned. And, I do spend a lot of time alone. So I like to get on and create community in a sense and just share what I've learned and try to create some good stuff, and that's really it. I really didn't want to be on the front lines, and I still don't, I just want to create some good stuff and just help people through the work if that's not through inspiration or enlightenment. And that's pretty much it. But yeah, so thanks for listening. Hope you guys have a great day. Hope this podcast episode wasn't too muggy. I'm like burning up at this point. I totally need to open the window because, yeah, it's pretty bad. Hope I didn't sweat out my edges. Peace.